For almost half a century, humanity stared into the stars and hit a wall. Warp drives, the very engines meant to fling us across light years, kept failing after only minutes. Ships tore apart, timelines fractured, entire missions vanished into chronoton storms that no one fully understood. Nations poured their fortunes into alien tech, quantum AIs, even theoretical physics, yet nothing worked. But then, when all hope seemed lost, it wasn't some machine, alien, or AI that solved the mystery. It was us, human engineers, armed with nothing more than stubborn creativity. Hey, if you love mind-bending science, epic human ingenuity, and those, wait, they actually did it? Moments, then you're in the right place. Go ahead, tap that like button, subscribe for more HFY stories, and share this with someone who still believes humans are unstoppable problem solvers. Trust me, this one's worth it. They called it the silent century. It wasn't because humanity had stopped looking at the stars, we never did, but because for decades every transmission from beyond our solar system ended the same way, with static. The dream had been simple at first: build warp drives, fold space, skip across light years like stepping stones across a river. By the 2070s, Earth's brightest minds believed the galaxy was finally within reach. And then, reality hit back. The first interstellar ship, Aurora 1, launched to fanfare that echoed across every continent. Billions watched as it slipped into warp space, a gleaming silver spear vanishing into the unknown. For 2 minutes, humanity held its breath. Then the signal fractured, first into echoes, then into nothing. The ship was gone. No debris, no survivors, no explanation. Some blamed alien interference. Others whispered about sabotage. But as more missions vanished, a grim truth began to surface. The warp bubbles were collapsing not gradually, but catastrophically. The fabric of space-time itself was fighting back. Engineers eventually found the culprit. A subtle but lethal effect they dubbed chronoton decay, a cascading buildup of temporal particles that destabilized warp fields. In plain terms, the longer a ship stayed in warp, the more time itself began to unravel around it. Clocks went haywire, hulls aged centuries and seconds. Crews. Well, nobody liked to talk about what happened to the crews. Imagine building the fastest car in history, only to discover the highway itself crumbles the moment you hit top speed. That's how humanity felt. And the worst part? The paradox seemed unsolvable. The math broke down no matter how they approached it. Decade after decade, the problem swallowed entire research agencies. AI systems designed to process trillions of scenarios gave nothing but dead ends. Alien archives acquired through rare trade agreements offered no solution either, just vague warnings about temporal instability thresholds that they themselves had abandoned long ago. Even civilizations millions of years ahead hadn't cracked it. The galaxy wasn't empty. It was simply inaccessible. By the mid-2090s, the mood on Earth shifted. Funding dried up. Interstellar programs were shelved. Warp drive projects were quietly archived behind digital vaults. There were still optimists, dreamers staring at the night sky, but they were drowned out by cynics who muttered, "If aliens couldn't solve it, what chance do we have?" And honestly, who could blame them? It's hard to keep faith when the universe itself seems to be saying no. But here's the twist. History has a funny way of underestimating humans. While the big agencies were busy surrendering to equations, small teams of rogue engineers and independent thinkers refused to let go. In forgotten hangars, abandoned lunar stations, and half-funded university labs, they started asking a different question. Not, how do we overpower the paradox? But, what if we're looking at it the wrong way? One of them, Dr. Elia Tran, famously said in an interview decades later, "AI was great at finding solutions, but only to the questions we programmed it to ask. Humans? We're good at asking the wrong questions, and sometimes that's exactly what you need." She wasn't alone. Across the globe, a strange movement began to grow. Not an official program, not a government initiative, but a quiet, stubborn rebellion of human ingenuity. Engineers from wildly different backgrounds, Quantum physicists, textile designers, even musicians started collaborating in unconventional brainstorming sessions. You might be thinking, musicians? Really? Yes. Because sometimes the answer to a physics problem doesn't come from more equations. It comes from rhythm, patterns, and intuition. These sessions were messy, loud, chaotic, but they were human, and they started revealing something the cold logic of machines had missed: subtle harmonics inside warp fields that behaved less like rigid structures and more like living patterns. The chronoton decay paradox wasn't a wall, it was a kind of music. A dangerous, unstable song the universe sang whenever someone tried to bend it. And for the first time in decades, humanity began to listen carefully. They didn't know it yet, but this shift, from brute-forcing equations to embracing creative pattern thinking, would change everything. Because buried inside that chaotic, cosmic melody was a loophole so elegant, so shockingly simple, that it would make alien scientists slap their foreheads in disbelief. But that's for Chapter 2. Breakthroughs never arrive with trumpet blasts. They come quietly, usually at 3 a.m., surrounded by half-empty coffee mugs and tired laughter. That's exactly how it happened. A small group of engineers huddled inside a forgotten orbital lab drifting above Earth were experimenting with warp field harmonics, trying not to solve the paradox, but to understand its rhythm. Among them was Leah Tran, a former warp theorist who had abandoned traditional equations in favor of what she called listening sessions. She once described it like this: "We stopped treating space-time like a wall to punch through and started treating it like a fabric we could weave." It was during one of these late-night sessions that an audio engineer, yes, an audio engineer, noticed something strange. When they translated chronoton field fluctuations into sound, a repeating pattern emerged, faint but undeniable. It was a quantum interference beat like the thrum of distant drums. No AI had ever picked it up because it wasn't purely mathematical. It was artistic. That's when the idea struck them. What if, instead of trying to stabilize warp fields by brute force, they could braid them, interlace quantum entanglement threads the way ancient weavers intertwined fibers to strengthen cloth? They called it the quantum weave. Imagine space-time as a huge piece of silk constantly vibrating. Warp drives used to shove a ship straight through it, like a spear through fabric, tearing and causing dangerous chronoton buildups. The quantum weave, however, proposed something different. Moving with the fabric, weaving the warp bubble into the natural harmonics of space-time so the decay never had a chance to escalate. Sounds elegant? It was. Sounds impossible? At first, yes. But elegance has a way of working when brute force doesn't. For months, they tested tiny models, microscopic warp fields inside containment chambers. Normally, these fields would destabilize within seconds. But with the quantum weave adjustments, they held steady. For minutes, then hours. The turning point came when they ran the longest test in human history. A weave-stabilized warp bubble stayed stable for 17 continuous days. No chronoton spikes, no temporal degradation. 17 days. That number echoed across every scientific boardroom, news network, and deep space command center. The paradox was broken, and suddenly the silent century wasn't so silent anymore. Warp programs restarted overnight. Retired scientists returned to the labs. Funding poured in. More importantly, something intangible but powerful reignited: hope. The first full-scale ship to test the quantum weave was the Horizon Breaker. Unlike Aurora 1, its launch wasn't wrapped in flashy spectacle. The crew knew the risks, but there was a quiet confidence in their eyes. When the ship engaged its weave drive, the world watched. Seconds passed, then minutes, then hours. The signal never fractured. In fact, after 3 weeks, Horizon Breaker transmitted its first long-range message from Proxima Centauri, a crisp, clear signal. No static, no echoes. Humanity had crossed the stars and stayed there. The elegance of the quantum weave stunned even alien observers. Some ancient civilizations, who had long accepted the paradox as unsolvable, began contacting Earth not with pity, but with curiosity. They wanted to learn. From us. It wasn't superior technology that achieved it. It wasn't endless processing power. It was human creativity, stubbornness, and the ability to see patterns where machines saw noise. Think about that for a second. We solved a problem that millions of years of galactic history had left untouched. Not because we were the most advanced species, but because we were the most imaginative. And that, more than any engine, is what will carry us through the stars. So the next time someone tells you humanity can't compete with alien civilizations or ultra-intelligent AI, remember the quantum weave. Remember a handful of exhausted engineers in a floating lab, staring at strange harmonics and refusing to give up. This wasn't just a scientific victory. It was a reminder of who we are. We adapt. We improvise. We listen to the universe in ways no machine can. The stars were never truly closed off. They were waiting for us to learn their song. And now, the galaxy is open. If you enjoyed this HFY sci-fi story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with fellow space dreamers. Who knows? Maybe the next great breakthrough will come from someone just like you.